Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined today on this fine Thursday morning. It all just kind of bleeds into each other, right? This time of year, it's just like you wake up and you check your phone is essentially what it becomes. And part of the reason that you're checking your phone this time of the year is waiting for Jake's tweets to let you know that something is going on around the league. That is Jake Fischer. He is of Yahoo Sports. He is of Ball Don't Lie. He has his podcast, No Cap Room. And most importantly, he wrote Built to Lose, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. It's one of those like prism changing books, like the way that you kind of look at the league after you read that book. Oh my God, I forgot to, we'll do that. Brad is not on the show. But yeah, we have, it is one of those prism changing books that once you read, the way that you kind of look at the league kind of changes forever. And I kind of wanted to start here with you because
thank you, man.
You have teams like the Lakers are essentially looking to trade 2029's pick. Mm-hmm. And then if they don't trade it, they would have the opportunity to trade, 3 picks in this upcoming summer, including as far out as 2031. And then on the other end of the prism, the other end of the spectrum, you have the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have like 45 picks basically in the next, however many rounds in that time span, basically. And like from your perspective, having written about it, having reported it thoroughly, does it like hurt your soul when you hear the Lakers like getting ready to just trade every pick they have for the next decade or so?
It's interesting. I was talking to a head coach about that literally before we got on the phone, how like I think the time period of my book from 2013 to 2016, when Sam Hinkie came to power, when Pete D'Alessandro rose to power in Sacramento, when Ryan McDonough got hired in Phoenix, Rob Hennigan was in Orlando, like all these analytical-minded executives really, to your point about like the prism changing of the league, like we're now in this era where every transaction is so measured by asset valuation and like cents on the dollar that it does kind of, I think, maybe bastardize what like the judgment is, and that's just like making your team better. And sure, like there's foresight that needs to be employed, and when you mortgage all of your picks to the point where like you're now hamstrung later in the future and aren't able to get better when you think you have a chance at a title and those moves didn't work. Like I understand what you're saying. I'm someone in my dynasty fantasy football league. I've traded all my picks because like who knows what's going to happen. Like people were killing the Heat. Some people were killing the Heat around the league for giving up a real first round pick for Terry Rozier when the thought is like no one else was going to do that. Well, if no one else was going to do that and you wanted Terry Rozier, who knows how good your pick is going to be in 2027 and 2028. Jimmy Butler's 34 years old. Like, go get your guy. I don't care if the Pacers were the only team that were going to give 3 first-round picks for Pascal Siakam. Like, they wanted Pascal Siakam. They think they have a window to get better with Tyrese Halliburton. And he, through whatever back channels existed, like had indicated enough he wanted to stay there. Like, go get your guy. I think right now there's a lot of, I don't know, like over assessment of like if you pay 10 cents more than what the price should have been, like all the dudes in my dynasty league who are typing in every trade in the dynasty calculator, like if it's not what the calculator says is a win, but like this is real life. Like you're never going to know at the time how a deal is going to work out. You're never going to know how valuable a pick is going to become. Like sure, there are certain decisions in hindsight that should have been looked at as an overpay back then, like the fact that Minnesota incentivized Golden State way back when to take on Andrew Wiggins when he ended up becoming an all-star there and what have you. Like sure, like in the moment there are certain deals that you can really scratch your head at. I know I'm rambling here, but like to bring it back to the Lakers, like you got LeBron at 39 years old playing all-star caliber basketball and Anthony Davis looking like a two-way monster, like more consistently than he's ever had before. If you've got 1 first-round pick to trade in 2029, like I don't know if the world's going to exist in 2029. Like trade the pick.
that's where I usually align. Existential crises aside, like it is just you have essentially. I look at it as like a business transaction between the Lakers and LeBron and AD. And LeBron and AD have more than done their share of what you would expect here, right? The fact that LeBron is still playing like this at 39 years old is just insane. Nobody could have seen it coming. And the fact that he has done what it has taken to allow his body to continue to do this, like if he says jump, it's how high, essentially, is how I would kind of operate things. But that isn't necessarily how the Lakers are operating, especially after the Russell Westbrook trade that has left, I think, real scars in the organization and a real kind of fear of, okay, we can't do that again. We can't screw ourselves like that again. And I think it's made them somewhat gun shy. And, this trade deadline season, the main focus, organizationally is Dejounte Murray. I'm told he's their highest priority. He has been their highest priority. They came very close to actually landing him. And then those talks kind of fell apart. The sense that I get right now is that Atlanta is basically demanding Austin Reeves. That is like that, I've even been told that like all of the third team stuff with D'Angelo Russell is almost somewhat of a red herring, where like it's, it sends a message out to the rest of the league. Hey, this might be progressing. Just so you know, can we get some other offers in here so we can move this thing forward? But they really want Austin Reeves. A, do you think Atlanta moves off of that stance? And B, do you think the Lakers, given what we just talked about the 29 first round pick, do you think they ever move off of the stance with Austin?
I don't think they move off the stance with Austin right now. I think they take a lot of value in him being this homegrown talent, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that Alex Caruso left, that's kind of still bandied about as like
talk about scars.
The Lakers version of Toronto not wanting to repeat Fred VanVleet walking for nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and also, I mean, just by nature of whatever the clause in the CBA was, I forget the name, that limited him to what his max salary was this summer. Like he's on a great contract.
Poison pill thing.
He's on a great contract from just like a value standpoint. Like Terry Rozier making $23 million. Like, what's the difference between Terry Rozier and Austin Reeves? Like, I really don't know. So
yeah,
I think that's a big part of it too. Like, not just the homegrown and the sentimentality, but the fact that if you are trying to build a roster that's, regardless of what your pick pool is, like, it's just more challenging when you have two max players on the books compared to one, especially in today's new economy with the new collective bargaining agreement. He's just a very valuable piece for multiple reasons. So,
yep.
I to bring it to Dejounte, yeah, I do think he is their top priority based off of everything I've heard and based off of the fact that just I think objectively he is the best player on the board in terms of all the players that teams are willing to move right now, who is still young, who has all-star credentials, and who's on a team-controlled contract. Like, if you look at him versus Bruce Brown, for example, who's definitely another guy on the Lakers wish list. Everyone knows that he was someone that they were targeting for their mid-level last year before he got this balloon payment from Indiana. Yep. You know, teams aren't so thrilled by his contract. Like, it was a great way for Indiana to steal Bruce Brown and then use him to be a trade chip to go get somebody, which is what happened. And, like, it's just really I mean, you can trade for Bruce Brown, and then before he you have to decide on his team option. You can kind of do some under the table, conversations and try to figure out a way to.
No, that doesn't happen. How dare you, Jake?
It doesn't happen. But I mean, you can in theory decline the team option, then give him a smaller deal. If some team traded for Bruce Brown right now, and then it all went well in the playoffs, and he wanted to stick around, I'm sure there's a way to decline that team option and then give him something like a 3-year, $45 million deal. Like, I think that's very in the cards. But the fact that that might not happen, I mean, what if it doesn't go well? And then you have to decide whether to give him $23 million. He's not a $23 million player in today's economy.
No.
So I think that's what makes Dejounte, and compared to Zach LaVine and his deal and the health stuff there, like, That's what makes Dejounte pretty an optimal fit, especially with the fact that the biggest complaints I think about the D'Lo and Reeves pairing is that that's just not the most weaponized version of a Lakers defense, you know?
Yeah.
So if you can bring someone like Dejounte, who is, I mean, watching him flank Steph Curry last night in Golden State, and I only watched the first half, but he's just so long and shifty and agile. Like, he'd be incredible for the point of attack and just other perimeter defensive deficiencies that have come in LA. So, yeah, I think ultimately right now their offer of a 2029 first and a swap and the salary stuff is probably, from what I've heard, that's the best offer I've heard Atlanta has gotten. So is there a chance come February 8th that, or maybe even February 6th, that like Atlanta looks around the league and realizes, all right, this really is our best thing? I think that is possible, but the Hawks are just as concerned about getting back players than they are about the pick valuation that they sent out for Dejounte Murray. So I don't think that D'Lo. Sorry, I'm just giving a call. I don't think D'Lo is gonna do it for them. So I do wonder if they would be willing to take a lesser deal in terms of draft capital if it was to get back a real player that they think they could really use to really compete for a play-in tournament appearance behind Trae Young and Jalen Johnson.
Yeah, the concern basketball wise with the D'Lo for Dejounte trade is Trae Young and D'Angelo Russell. Like, you have those same on-ball issues, right, where they would step on each other's toes on offense, and that would be one of the worst defensive pairings in the backcourt I have ever seen. So, like, you know, it kind of makes sense that even if they do take a look around the league, they don't get another better offer. Like, it almost makes sense for them to either, really see if the Lakers can go out and find a third team and get a better defensive pairing there with Trae to make them still competitive, or get the trade done a little earlier so that they could try to flip D'Lo into something and get a better player there, based off of their different relationships with teams that like the Lakers don't have per se. The thing that I keep coming back to with this, and I know, like I just said, and we both said, the Lakers' top priority is Dejounte Murray, but I feel like we've heard so much about this at this point, and so many of Rob Pelinka's deals have just kind of come out of nowhere, right? The Rui one happened last year. The fact that Minnesota got involved and the Lakers brought in D'Angelo Russell last year for Russell Westbrook, even the Russell Westbrook trade, right, where Kyle Kuzma thought he was going to be a Sacramento King, is on the record saying he thought he was going to be a Sacramento King, and the Lakers were going to trade him for Buddy Hield. Is there how do you kind of cover and report on a GM like Rob, who has such a tight inner circle, right? Like, he has people that he, collects data with in the organization. And then I'm told that he basically just kind of closes himself off. Maybe Darvin is in that room too, and they make those decisions on the directions that the Lakers are going to go in. Like, do you leave yourself outs there when you're trying to report on what this guy might do?
I think for myself, like, I never report anything that I'm not certain of,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pull. Like, if you hear something from a couple people, but you don't have it confirmed and you don't know it to be true, and then it comes out and you're like, oh shit, I had that. It could definitely influence you the next time around to put something out that you've heard, that you definitely heard, but you don't know. You're not confident in it. You haven't talked to someone who's actually primarily involved. And sometimes when you put that out, like, it's not right. Like, I've heard from, I'll give an example without saying what it is. Like, I've heard from several people that one team in the Eastern Conference is calling about this veteran player that, like, I heard there was a deal done, and then he got hurt, and then it got taken off the books and blah blah blah. And like, I finally called a high-ranking person from the team with that veteran player yesterday and asked him about it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard that too, but they never called us." So that guy could be lying to me, or he's telling the truth, and maybe this is like 7 iterations of a game of telephone, and this team that had an idea, was like getting ready to work on it and offer it, and then the player got hurt, and it didn't. I don't know exactly what happened, so I haven't reported it. But
Yeah.
you know, maybe 2 months from now, when we're picking up the pieces of the deadline, and I'm getting beers with someone when they come into New York, and I ask him about it, and he says, "Oh yeah, like maybe there's more to come from there." So I think the other thing though is like when a deal happens. So like when this D'Lo for Dejounte, like that package was out there. Like the fact that it got
Yeah.
reported by 4 different outlets, like that, I heard it like 2 weeks before, and I thought to be like, oh, I had it first. Like I'm just saying, I think that stuff happened well before it came out publicly. And
Yep.
so sometimes, some people, a lot of times when that stuff happens, I'll have people even in the league text me like, "Hey, why do you think this came out now?" And sometimes it's just because a guy's going on a podcast with Anthony Irwin and he just says something. You know what I mean? And then it gets picked up and it gets aggregated. And
Yeah.
then the beat writer of that team sees it and it's like, oh, well, I had this too. Like, I got to, show it to my bosses or to my readers that I am not behind the eight ball and I can even advance the story. And then it just kind of goes from there. So for me, like, I'm always trying to like touch every tentacle of a deal. So like I'm trying to get everyone I know who knows D'Lo, everyone I know who knows Jalen Hood Schifino, and Lakers people, and some guy who's a player's guy who just is around the Lakers, and
Yep.
every Hawks guy I can. And eventually, like to me, you collect all the data points, and like to bring it to a specific thing, like with the Pacers Siakam deal, like the first report came out that night before that it was Bruce Brown and 3 picks, and like I was able to pin down it was Jordan Nwora was one piece, and then there was 2024 first, and like that's what I put out because like I didn't know the rest. Like we wrote
Yeah.
that people are saying it could be Obi and Jalen or Aaron Nesmith, but like we knew it was Jordan Nwora, and we knew there were 2024 first, and the rest was like still to be determined. So that's always been my approach.
Yeah, it's tricky doing all this stuff, and I've kind of dipped my toe into it this year for the first time, like kind of publicly. And yeah, like for every opportunity that you have to like, technically say something first that eventually gets out there, there's also those spots where like just recently I had it good. I had good information on it that the Lakers were going to start their old lineup from
Mm-hmm.
last year's playoff run. And still to this day, some people that I talked to are saying, yeah, Darvin changed his mind. He kind of he threw people for a loop, and we were surprised that Rui started. Other people were like, yeah, it's kind of tricky. He kind of wanted to see Rui out there. Rui has played well in starts and blah 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 blah. And you don't quite know. And I'm kicking I would have rather now if I had it back, stat on it a little bit. And I
Mm-hmm.
like there's not even a benefit to reporting that. That's news that becomes like publicly available a half hour
Yeah.
before the game anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is other options that the Lakers kind of have here, right? We talked about Dejounte Murray quite a bit here. There are always kind of smaller moves. We haven't gotten almost any wide reporting on the Lakers' intentions here. I've thrown out a list of people that I've been told the Lakers have called about, but they haven't really gotten very far in any of those talks I've heard, because their priority is with Murray, and they don't know what assets they'll have after that deal is done. What have you heard about the Lakers, like other things that they need to do?
Yeah, I think a lot of teams, like I talked to someone pretty high ranking yesterday at one team who was like, yeah, I guess we got to start making more calls because things are moving quickly. Like we haven't even called half the teams in the
Yes.
league
Oh
yet.
my God. Yeah.
So I do think there's plenty of teams who like the Lakers haven't even talked to, that other teams haven't even talked to. I've heard like a lot of those point guard type names that I saw someone write recently. I forget who it was. Like I've heard the Tyus Jones stuff. I heard the Dennis Schroeder stuff. I mean, Buddy Hield's always going to be someone that they're checking in on, just like
Just
by
always.
default. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
do think there's been some criticism from people around the team about the front court depth, and that Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood just like have not been satisfactory in that regard. But I
Yeah.
haven't heard the Lakers link to any of those types of players that are out there right now. So to me, it does seem like, and I'm not privy to everything, and I haven't been like
Yeah.
looking Lakers. To me, it just does seem like that the perimeter defense and that general point guard position is one that is of top priority. And I think it makes sense, being that without Gabe Vincent, the Lakers default, and without a real point guard, the Lakers default the entire time LeBron has been in Los Angeles has been, they'll just put the ball in LeBron's hands. And
Yeah.
I remember back in 2017 when I was like right out of school working for SI, like there was a morning shoot around at MSG when LeBron was still with Cleveland, and they had made the Isaiah Thomas Kyrie trade, and IT was hurt, and Derrick Rose was hurt, and Dwayne Wade was hurt, and LeBron was playing point guard again. And he was like, he heard me interviewing Channing Frye for a story, like on the sideline, and he was working with a coach. LeBron was kind of like yelling over his shoulder, like, I wasn't supposed to be a point guard this year. Like, this guy knows. This guy, the coach on the staff, he was like, this guy knows. We were working on post moves and one dribble hook shots and pivot foot and this and that. I wasn't supposed to be the point guard this year. So, like, a lot of, I think, the calculation has been from the get-go, dating back to the Russ trade and Dennis Schroeder's trade before that, like, trying to not have LeBron do everything on offense. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other weaknesses they're trying to fix and attend to as well. But, like, it makes sense to me that the main priority would be to try to continue to rely less on him as your creator and to support him as the weapon that he is.
Yeah, I always feel like LeBron goes through the same cycle every year where you start the year with whatever point guard it is that he thinks that, he's excited to acquire because it'll make his life easier. And then he realizes over the course of the year, shit, I'm still better on the ball than this guy. So he does all of the work all throughout the postseason. And then that's really hard work. And exiting that season, he goes, I can't do that again. And then it just brings you back to the beginning of the cycle at the beginning of the next year with point guard wide next time. Jake, this has been an absolute blast. You do incredible work for Yahoo and in your show, No Cap Room, which is meaning just dawned on me because I'm an old person. It's it's a very, very good show as well. And I cannot speak highly enough about your book, Built to Lie, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. I'm telling you, after reading it, the way that I've looked about the league has completely shifted. And I think it would do the same for everybody listening here as well.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's really an insider account of like what happens in a war room on draft night and at trade deadline. And there's so much stuff about the Lakers end of Kobe years where there's like the free agent meeting with Carmelo Anthony, and I'm blanking on. I remember when they were trying to get LeBron and Carmelo back in 2014. Like, I have Ryan Kelly on the record saying that Mitch Kupchak told him, if we get these guys, we'll give you this, and if we don't, we'll give you more. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. I mean, the D'Angelo Russell, Byron Scott, early soap opera. There's a ton of. D'Angelo Russell calls him an idiot on the record in the book. There's some stuff about Chris Kaman laying on the bench, and Kobe's last game was one of my favorite things to report on. So there's a ton of Lakers stuff in there for sure.
All right, everybody. Again, that is Built to Lose, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. That was Jake Fischer, my good buddy. It's great to see you, man. We don't talk often enough. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully in Vegas over the summer.
For sure. See you, buddy.